3 years ago, you thought your life would look different by now. You had plans, deadlines, promises you made to yourself, a version of yourself you were sure you were becoming. Then something strange happened. Nothing. Not one big mistake, not one catastrophic decision, just another Monday, then another, then another. And before you realized it, 3 years disappeared. The scary part? You can probably remember the goals, but you can't remember where the time went, because nobody wastes their life all at once. It disappears in pieces. 5 minutes here, an hour there, one postponed decision, one repeated habit, one ordinary day that feels too small to matter, until those days become a year, and that year becomes your life, which raises a disturbing question. If someone followed you with a camera for the next 30 days, would they discover the future you're hoping for, or the future you're actually creating? You tell yourself you're busy. That's the explanation you've been using for years. You're busy, the week is busy, life is busy. And to be fair, you're probably right. There are messages to answer, emails to read, things to fix, problems to solve, responsibilities waiting for you before you've even finished breakfast. The days feel full, sometimes overwhelming, which is why you rarely stop long enough to ask a dangerous question. Busy doing what? Because something strange has been happening, and you barely notice it. A week ends, then another, and somehow, they all start feeling the same. Monday arrives. You tell yourself you'll focus this week. Tuesday arrives. You're already behind. Wednesday disappears. You don't even know where it went. Thursday feels like recovery. Friday feels like survival. Then the weekend arrives, and suddenly, you feel exhausted. Not physically, existentially, like you've been moving non-stop without actually moving anywhere. So you promise yourself something. Next week will be different. Next week you'll start. Next week you'll get organized. Next week you'll finally focus on the things that matter. And for a moment, you believe it. Then next week arrives and looks strangely familiar. The same distractions, the same excuses, the same unfinished goals. You don't notice it happening because repetition never announces itself. It doesn't knock on the door. It doesn't warn you. It simply arrives disguised as another normal day. That's why it's so dangerous. If your life suddenly changed overnight, you would notice. If 5 years disappeared instantly, you would panic. But 5 years never disappear instantly. They disappear one ordinary Tuesday at a time, one evening spent scrolling, one postponed conversation, one promise quietly moved to tomorrow. Nothing feels significant in the moment. That's the trick, because life-changing consequences rarely feel life-changing while they're happening. You tell yourself you'll start after this week, after this project, after this stressful month, after things calm down, but things never calm down. Life simply gives you a new reason to wait, and while you're waiting, something else is happening. Your future is taking shape, not through the goals you write down, through the actions you repeat. Imagine somebody followed you around for 30 days, not your thoughts, not your intentions, not your dreams, only your behavior, what time you wake up, what you do first, where your attention goes, how you spend your evenings, what you do when nobody is watching. What story would that footage tell? Would it tell the story of the life you say you want? Or would it tell the story of a person stuck in a loop, convinced they're making progress because they're constantly in motion? Those aren't the same thing. Movement and progress are not the same thing. Being busy and moving forward are not the same thing. And deep down, you already know that, because you've had moments late at night, moments in the shower, moments driving home, when a thought appears out of nowhere, a thought so uncomfortable, you immediately push it away. The thought that maybe the reason life feels stuck isn't because you're trapped. Maybe it's because you're repeating the same week, the same decisions, the same reactions, over and over again. And if that's true, then something even more uncomfortable might also be true. The person creating most of your future might not be the person making plans. It might be the person following the routine. And that's where the story gets interesting. You probably believe you know who you are.
I'm time to go cry.
Most people do. You have a story about yourself, a collection of labels, descriptions, explanations. You tell yourself things like, I'm not disciplined, I'm bad at focusing, I'm always late, I'm terrible with money, I'm not confident, I'm just an anxious person. The words come so naturally, you barely hear them anymore. They feel like facts, like permanent features of your personality, like things that have always been there. But what if that's not true? What if most of what you call your personality started as repetition? Think about it. Nobody is born believing they're a procrastinator. Nobody enters the world convinced they're lazy, distracted, unmotivated. Those identities arrive later. At first, there is only behavior, one choice, one reaction, one decision. You postpone something once, then again, months pass, years pass, and eventually, you stop saying, I keep procrastinating. You start saying, I am a procrastinator. Notice the difference. The behavior became an identity, and once something becomes an identity, it becomes much harder to challenge, because changing a behavior feels simple. Changing who you think you are feels threatening. That's why so many people stay trapped, not inside habits, inside stories. Stories they've repeated for so long, they mistake them for reality. You say you're not disciplined, but maybe you've simply practiced distraction more often than focus. You say you're bad with money, but maybe you've repeated certain financial decisions for years. You say you're not confident, but maybe you've spent years rehearsing self-doubt. The repetition came first, the identity came later, and that's how the script becomes invisible. Because once a pattern becomes part of your identity, you stop questioning it, you defend it, you explain it, you build your life around it, and eventually, you forget where it came from. Imagine somebody recorded every decision you made for the next 6 months, every action, every purchase, every excuse, every distraction, every promise you make to yourself. Then imagine they watched the footage, not for a day, not for a week, for months. What version of you would they discover? Not the version you imagine, the version you practice. Because those are not always the same person, and that's where people become uncomfortable, deeply uncomfortable. Because most of us secretly believe our future will be different from our present. We imagine a future version of ourselves, more focused, more disciplined, more successful, more fulfilled. But there's a problem. That future version doesn't appear by magic. It emerges from repetition, which means the person you're becoming tomorrow is usually hiding inside the person you are today. Inside your routines, inside your reactions, inside the things you keep doing even when nobody is watching. And if that's true, another question appears. A question most people spend years avoiding. If repetition creates identity, what happens when repetition controls memory? What happens when entire years become so predictable, your brain stops recording them? Because that's exactly what's happening, and it's one of the reasons. Do you remember being younger and wondering why adults always said the same thing? Time goes by so fast. When you were 15, that sentence made no sense. A school year felt endless. Summer felt endless. A single month felt like a significant piece of your life. But something changed. Now another year disappears, and it barely surprises you. January becomes June. June becomes December. And before you've fully processed what happened, another year is over. You tell yourself life is moving faster. But what if time isn't moving faster at all? What if something else is happening? Think about your last 7 days. Not the highlights, the ordinary parts. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Can you remember them clearly? Not generally, specifically. Can you remember what you did last Wednesday at 7 p.m.? What about 2 Wednesdays ago? What about 3? Notice what happens. The details begin to disappear. The memories blur together. Not because you're forgetful, because your brain is efficient. It doesn't waste energy recording the same experience over and over again. When something is new, your brain pays attention. When something is familiar, your brain compresses it. That's why childhood feels longer. Everything is new. Everything is unfamiliar. Everything feels important. The first day of school, the first friendship, the first heartbreak, the first time you stayed out too late. Your brain records everything. But adulthood is different. Many days follow a script you've already seen. You wake up, go to work, answer messages, solve problems, come home tired, repeat. The details change, the structure doesn't, and eventually, your brain starts treating entire weeks like duplicates. 1 week becomes another, 1 month becomes another, 1 year becomes another. Not because nothing happened, because very little felt different. And that's where the real danger begins. Most people think the biggest tragedy is failure. It's not. Most people think the biggest tragedy is making the wrong decision. It's not that either. The real tragedy is drifting, quietly, gradually, without noticing. Because when you're drifting, nothing feels wrong enough to trigger alarm. You don't wake up in crisis. You wake up comfortable, and comfort is deceptive. Comfort makes repetition feel harmless. Comfort makes another identical week feel acceptable. Comfort makes delay feel reasonable. Until one day, something unexpected happens. You see an old photo. You meet someone you haven't seen in years. You celebrate another birthday. And for a brief moment, the spell breaks. You realize 5 years have passed. 5 entire years. And your first thought isn't usually, wow, that happened fast. Your first thought is usually something much more uncomfortable. I thought I'd be further along by now, not necessarily richer, not necessarily more successful, just different, closer to the person you imagined becoming, closer to the life you kept postponing. And that's the moment many people finally understand something. Time wasn't stolen from them. Time wasn't moving faster. They were repeating so consistently, their brains stopped distinguishing one day from the next, which creates a disturbing possibility. If repetition can shape your identity, and repetition can erase your memory of time, then what else can repetition do? What if repetition isn't just influencing your life? What if it's becoming the product? Because there are entire industries built around one goal: keeping your attention predictable, keeping your behavior predictable, keeping you coming back tomorrow to do exactly what you did today. And once you see that, the most valuable version of you isn't the smartest version. It isn't the most talented version. It isn't even the happiest version. It's the most predictable version, because predictable people are easy to understand, and people who are easy to understand are easier to influence. Think about it. Imagine 2 versions of yourself. The first version is unpredictable. One day they read something new. The next day, they question an old belief. The next day, they change a habit. They're difficult to model, difficult to anticipate, difficult to keep inside a pattern. The second version is different. They wake up at the same time, consume the same content, react to the same triggers, follow the same routines, day after day, month after month, year after year. Which version would be easier to predict? Which version would be easier to sell to? Which version would be easier to keep engaged? The answer is obvious, and that's why predictability has become incredibly valuable, not just to technology companies, not just to advertisers, to every system competing for your attention, because attention has become one of the most valuable resources on Earth, and attention follows patterns, your patterns, what you click, what you ignore, what keeps you watching, what makes you come back tomorrow. Every action leaves a clue. 1 clue means nothing. 1,000 clues reveal a pattern, and a pattern reveals something powerful, what you're likely to do next. That's the real product. Not the video, not the advertisement, not the platform. Prediction, the ability to estimate your next decision before you make it yourself. And here's the uncomfortable part. Most of the time, the prediction is right, not because you're weak, not because you're manipulated, because humans are creatures of repetition. You listen to similar ideas, follow similar routines, visit similar places, think similar thoughts. The familiar feels safe, and the safe becomes automatic. That's why the system rarely needs to force anything. Force creates resistance. Prediction doesn't. Prediction simply waits. It waits for you to become yourself again. Because eventually, most people do. They return to familiar behavior, the same habits, the same routines, the same reactions. And every time that happens, the pattern becomes stronger. But there's something interesting about patterns. They're incredibly powerful until they're noticed. The moment you become aware of a pattern, something changes. The prediction becomes less certain. The script becomes visible. And visible scripts are dangerous. Not to you, to the systems that depend on them, because awareness introduces something unpredictable. Choice, real choice, not the illusion of choice, the kind that appears when you suddenly stop and ask a question most people never ask. Why am I doing this? Why this habit? Why this routine? Why this reaction? Why does this feel automatic? And that single question is where predictability begins to break, because the moment you question a pattern, you step outside of it. And once you're outside of it, you can finally see it for the first time, which leads to the most important realization in this entire video, a realization that changes everything. Not because it gives you new information, because it changes the way you see yourself. Most people spend their entire lives trying to change, and that's why they fail, because they're aiming at the wrong target. They try to change their results before they understand their patterns. They try to change their future before they understand their days. They try to become somebody new without ever paying attention to the person they already are. And that's where the cycle begins, again and again and again. A new goal, a burst of motivation, a promise to start fresh. For a few days, everything feels different. You wake up earlier, you focus more, you feel momentum. Then life happens, a stressful day, a difficult week, an unexpected problem, and almost without noticing, you return. Not to who you want to be, to who you've practiced being. Because under pressure, people rarely rise to their intentions. They fall back to their patterns. That's why motivation feels powerful and then disappears. Motivation can create action, but only awareness can create change. Because awareness sees the thing motivation misses, the loop, the invisible sequence, the trigger, the reaction, the reward, the pattern you've repeated so many times, it feels like part of you. But here's the realization that changes everything. You are not your patterns. You are the person observing them. Read that again, because most people never separate the two. You feel anxious, so you assume you are an anxious person. You procrastinate, so you assume you are a procrastinator. You get distracted, so you assume that's simply your nature. But what if those things are not you? What if they're behaviors you've rehearsed for so long, they started feeling like an identity? Think about how different that is. Because if a pattern is who you are, you're trapped. But if a pattern is something you do, you can change it. Not instantly, not effortlessly, but gradually. The same way the pattern was built, one repetition at a time. And that's the moment you become dangerous. Not dangerous to other people, dangerous to every script you've been unconsciously following. Because scripts depend on invisibility. They survive because they're never questioned. They survive because they feel normal. The moment you notice them, their power begins to weaken. The moment you observe them, you stop moving entirely on autopilot. And for the first time in a long time, a gap appears. A tiny gap between impulse and action, between habit and choice, between the person you've been and the person you're becoming. It's a small gap, so small that most people miss it. But your future lives inside that gap, because that's where different decisions are made. That's where different behaviors begin. That's where different lives start. Not in some dramatic moment. Not on January 1st. Not after watching a motivational video. In a pause. A pause that lasts only a few seconds. A pause where you finally see what you're doing while you're doing it. And once that happens, something strange occurs. The routine doesn't look the same anymore. The distraction doesn't look the same anymore. The excuses don't look the same anymore, because now you can see them. And once something is seen clearly, it becomes much harder. Remember the question from the beginning. 3 years ago, you thought your life would look different by now. You had plans, goals, ideas about who you were becoming. And maybe some of those things happened. Maybe some didn't. But that's not the question anymore. The question isn't whether life went according to plan. The question is much simpler. Did you notice it happening? Because that's what most people lose. Not money, not opportunities, not even time. Attention. The ability to witness their own life while they're living it. Most people are always somewhere else, thinking about tomorrow, regretting yesterday, waiting for next month, waiting for next year, waiting for some future version of themselves to finally arrive. And while they're waiting, their life keeps moving, quietly, one ordinary day at a time. That's why the biggest changes rarely feel big. Nobody wakes up and suddenly becomes a different person. Nobody wakes up and suddenly loses 10 years. Those things happen gradually, so gradually they become invisible. Until one day, you look at an old photograph, an old message, an old version of yourself, and you're confronted by a strange feeling. You remember who you wanted to become, but you also realize something else. That person wasn't created by dreams. That person wasn't created by intentions. That person was created by repetition. The same repetition that built yesterday, the same repetition that built today, the same repetition that's already building tomorrow. And that's why your future has never been hiding in the distance. It has never been waiting somewhere beyond the horizon. It has never been locked inside the perfect opportunity, the perfect plan, the perfect moment. It's been hiding somewhere much closer, inside the things you repeat, inside the things you tolerate, inside the things you've stopped questioning. That's the uncomfortable truth, but it's also the hopeful one, because if repetition can build a life, it can rebuild one too, not instantly, not dramatically, quietly, the same way everything else was built. One decision, one interruption, one moment of awareness, repeated again and again. And maybe that's the real reason this matters. Not because you'll wake up tomorrow transformed. You won't. Not because you'll suddenly have all the answers. You won't. But because something has changed. A question now exists where certainty used to be. An awareness now exists where autopilot used to be. And once that awareness appears, it's difficult to go back. You'll start noticing things, the routines, the impulses, the distractions, the patterns, things that used to feel invisible, things that used to feel like just the way life is. And every time you notice one, you'll be given something most people never realize they have. A choice, a real choice, not between success and failure, not between right and wrong, but between continuing the pattern or stepping outside of it. Because in the end, your life is not made from the goals you set. It's made from the things you repeat when nobody is watching. And maybe the strangest part of all, the future you've been waiting for has been quietly forming around you this entire time. Not tomorrow, not next year, today, right now, in this moment, while you're paying attention. So tonight, watch your life like a stranger would. Notice what feels automatic. Notice what feels inevitable. Notice what you keep doing without ever asking why. Because the next video isn't about your habits. It's about something deeper. It's about where those habits came from in the first place. The influences, the environments, the invisible forces that helped write the script long before you knew it existed. And once you see those, you'll start understanding something most people never do. Why some choices never truly felt like choices at all. Until then, pay attention. The clues are already there.